What would the senior VP of Hubspot, a guy who led this well-known company from a startup to a publicly traded company worth over $600 million in revenue, say about leadership and building creative teams? I'm glad you asked, because today we have that very leader, Christopher O'Donnell, here to share his leadership wisdom with you. Welcome to the Leadership Coaching Group's podcast. I'm your host, Liz Howard, an entrepreneur, author, and executive leadership coach. This is where I introduce you to the top experts that discuss the burning topics that leaders at all levels need to know about. My goal is to help you become a leader that you are confident others will want to follow. So, subscribe to the show, listen in weekly, and watch your confidence as a leader grow. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Liz Howard, the host of the podcast and the founder of the Leadership Coaching Group. If you listen to the show often, you know I built TLCG to help both current and future leaders develop an ethical, heart-based leadership philosophy. So even when they're tested in the toughest situations, they will have their leadership muscle memory in place so they can act in a way that they can be proud of, even years from now. That's why this entire month, I'm going to be sharing different perspectives on what leadership truly is. Last week, I had a great talk with Greg Ward about the necessity of respectful leadership. Now, if you didn't hear it, I highly recommend you give it a listen because he unpacks how the lack of respect from leaders can elicit a threat response from a team, among many other important points. Next week, you get a one-on-one conversation with me about how I've pulled my own definition of leadership from historical, modern military, and personal accounts. Richard is joining me the last week of the month to discuss how leadership changes in a crisis situation. As a former mass care chief of the American Red Cross and as a submarine captain during the Cold War, this is definitely Richard's zone of genius to address. But today, I'm so excited to introduce you to a multi-passionate leader, Christopher O'Donnell. Christopher is the Senior VP of Hubspot product, which he led from a small startup to a publicly traded company worth $600 million in revenue. He also has a passion for music, and if you check out his latest song on YouTube, you'll see it has over 4 million views. Whether he's driving innovation in a tech company or behind a record label, Christopher understands leadership. Christopher, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz.
Oh, I'm really excited to talk to you. I think all the stuff that HubSpot does is really cool, and your own background is really interesting. So thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to it.
So can you kind of tell our listeners a little bit about who Christopher O'Donnell is and what you do in both your work at HubSpot and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a dad and a husband. And then, I fill my professional life with work at HubSpot, where we make CRM software for small and medium-sized businesses that really matches the way that modern buyers shop and buy, and helping companies market and sell and service and create amazing customer experiences. Very passionate about that. And then outside of family and work, I play music. I'm super into music, and I have a band called The Providers. And I learn a ton from working in that kind of creative environment too. So I guess more than anything, I just want to be around, cool, diverse, creative people and help them make something that maybe they wouldn't have made, without that team coming together.
That's excellent. And I think that there's probably a whole lot that we can talk about with all of these things, because even being a parent requires a type of leadership, doesn't it? So there's a lot here. Can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how it is that you got, because you gave a very modest introduction of yourself, but you're very high ranking at HubSpot. So how did you kind of get to the role that you're in, and what was your journey like as a leader?
Sure. Yeah. So I work in this field of product management, user experience. In another field, it would be thought of as production, sort of being a producer, being a record producer, a film producer, a show producer. In software, we happen to call it product management, but it's really the producer role. And like most people that I know in product management, I sort of fell into it, or kind of came in through the bathroom window, so to speak. So I did a undergrad degree in music with an emphasis on technology, and then got a job as a marketer and really loved it, at a technology company. And then found that I was very passionate about the products that we were selling, and worked my way into eventually running that product management team and working with the engineers to build the software. And then from there, I joined an early stage startup in Cambridge, Mass, that ended up getting acquired by HubSpot. That was 8 or 9 years ago. And I've, as they say, I've just kind of tried to hang on to the rocket ship, I guess. And yeah, I've had some career growth, and that's largely due to the company growth and sticking around and just trying to weather the seasons. And, as I say, hold on for dear life. It's cool though. I get to do a lot of things that I've never done before in this journey. So that's kind of it. I fell into product management. I fell into a startup. We got acquired, and I started as a frontline product manager, and then have had several chapters over the course of this decade now. Wow, geez, almost a decade.
Time flies.
And now I'm kind of running the whole team, and it's a huge honor and a big responsibility.
Can you tell us a little bit about what had to shift for you as a leader going from being a frontline manager to a VP role? How did your mindset about leadership and just kind of the way that you approached yourself? Like, let's start first with you. How did you kind of get yourself in the game to be a VP?
Well, I remember one dinner that I had. It was probably, I think it was December of 2013. And I remember this really well. And I was at dinner with my boss, who was the chief product officer at the time. And I had tried to take over as much of the product as possible. I had tried to make my plate bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was product managing more than half of the entire product line myself at that point. And we sat there at dinner, and he said a very clarifying thing to me. And he said, "Christopher, I can't ask you to do anything." And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had to sleep on it and really marinate on it. And I realized that the way to grow wasn't actually to try to assume more responsibility. It was to really start thinking about developing the next generation of leadership for these missions that I was running. It was way too much for me to be running myself. And I had to start to give these things away and find people who hadn't worked on those types of missions before, and help them grow into taking over those missions. And it was by doing that that I ended up having oxygen back in my life, and they could ask me to do different things. And that was, I think, the biggest turning point, is just this idea, we call it giving away your Legos. You can't get more toys unless you give your toys away. And so, it's a huge part of growing into leadership is actually stopping doing a lot of the missions, and performing a lot of the same behaviors that you did in your old role. And that's actually really hard. We try to develop mastery in our role, whatever it may be. And it gets fun, and it's fulfilling. It feels good to come into work and do something and feel like you're reasonably good at it, and, kind of go home and sleep well, knowing that you did a good job. It's harder actually to step into something that you haven't done and trust somebody else to come in and take that mission over. But that's definitely the goal. And for all my people, I try to hammer that into their worldview, that your goal is to be able to step away from whatever your current role is, which is a bit of a mindset shift.
Yeah, oh, it is, and I agree with you. It's really hard. I want to backpedal just a little bit, because something that you said really caught my ear about how you needed some oxygen back into your life. So what was happening for you personally by not letting go? How did that affect you and the way that you were getting work done?
Well, I was becoming a bottleneck, certainly, as as one becomes when you take on too much. I think that my level of engagement and involvement on any particular aspect of what I was working on was starting to suffer. So that was tough. And there were these new and exciting next chapters available for people to be imagining and working on and incubating. And I wasn't able to contribute to those conversations because there wasn't, I mean, there literally wasn't a free moment in the day between working with customers and working internally and working with engineers and designers, and sort of all of the tradecraft of my role. There was no time to start to think about what's the next big challenge that we have as a company. And if you get into a rut like that, even if you're doing a good job, I mean, my performance reviews were fine, up until the point that I got a performance review, which was, you have a huge decision to make about whether you're going to really reach your potential. And that was a wake up call. It was written right in front of me. Hey, you can keep doing what you're doing, and that's fine, and you can feed your family doing it. How are you going to get to the next level? And are you ready, right? And are you open to that? And being open to that, you just have to get the hours back in your day by giving things away.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you have spent some time and done some thought work to develop your idea of what leadership is. Can you give us your definition of leadership?
Sure, yeah. I mean, leadership is about building and inspiring and retaining highly productive creative teams. For me, that's the whole thing. And to do that as a leader, you really ought to, in my view, adopt some perspective of being in service to the team. And that changes the perspective. It's a little bit different from some other schools of thought on leadership where, I'm trying to hire people who are way better than me. And I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I'm trying to figure out, what's the right mission for them? What are the goals and guardrails for that mission? What are the resources they have for that mission? Why is it right for them? And support them and be in service of that mission and of each of these individuals in their own leadership. So for me, it's about building diverse, inclusive teams where people belong. And that's for the end of getting really high performance, innovation, and creative results.
So I love what you're saying. And this isn't a simple task at all. What have you found are some of the challenges in building really successful and innovative teams? What makes that challenging sometimes?
I break the challenge down into these three kind of categories. You have diversity, which is the challenge of building the team that is going to have the best ideas. Teams that are comprised of people from different backgrounds with different personalities and different behaviors and different communication styles and different ways of thinking consistently outperform homogenous teams. All the research shows that. And so your first challenge is to build a team where all kinds of different perspectives exist. That's the first challenge. The second challenge of inclusivity or inclusion is creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing those ideas. So you could have a diverse team where people aren't necessarily speaking up or communicating and sharing in a way that is leveraging all of these ideas. And the key idea around inclusion for me is psychological safety. How do you create an environment where this diverse team is empowered on a sub team and individual level and collectively as a whole? They're empowered to share these ideas and they have the safe space of doing it. It means creating an environment that is not competitive. It means creating an environment where people can, one of my favorite things about HubSpot is that, halfway through a meeting, you can raise your hand and say, I don't know what that acronym is.
Mm.
And no one's going to roll their eyes. And, everybody in the company does that. Like, hold on. Can someone just take 2 seconds and explain this one thing? And then 3 other people in the room are nodding, going like, yeah. I don't think all of us know what's going on here. That's great. That's the kind of environment you want. And then the third part is belonging and creating an environment where people not just, you have a diverse team, they feel psychologically safe to share their ideas, but they feel like they belong there. What are the Sunday scaries on your team? I
Mm.
love that question for any leader. You know, what is it at 4 p.m. on a Sunday that's going to make someone on your team scared for Monday? And as a leader, get rid of those things. Monday morning should not be a dirty word. We should feel like we belong there. We should feel like this is a natural part of our life course and we're coming in to work on an exciting mission to which we feel we can add value. And as a leader, if people don't feel that way, that's totally on you. So those are the 3 big buckets of challenges that I see.
So did you ever have a time where you identified some Sunday scaries in a team that you were leading?
Every day. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a whole category of them of just interpersonal stuff where maybe the chemistry on a team isn't quite right. And, I'll tell you, that will send people packing.
Yeah.
If you want to lose your best people, create an environment where they actually don't want to be sitting around the people around them. And what I've learned is that when I say chemistry, I'm not trying to be cute or too generous about it, is that you could have 6 people and you divide them into 2 teams of 3, and both of those teams are highly dysfunctional. and you divide it a different way into two teams of three, and the teams are highly performant and very happy and high-fiving and, have charts up and to the right and, sticky notes on the whiteboard and, kind of, ordering food in and having fun and doing all, creating their own culture and doing all this kind of fun stuff. It's not, there are good people and bad people. It's about finding a way of, getting the teams to work together. That's the biggest one, is just, you dig, and you find, okay, this person and this person really have a tough time kind of coming together in leadership for the team. And so let's mix it up a little bit. And so that's definitely one category.
So one of the things that I think can be challenging for leaders is knowing how to get that data point and understand that there could be chemistry issues or anything else, because sometimes people don't want to tell someone at a VP level. And you mentioned sometimes you've got to dig, but how is it that you get that pulse to know when something is awry and know to fix it? Because at your level, sometimes it can be a challenge to be that in touch.
I will be the last to know. I absolutely will be the last to know. And so that's kind of the key to it. And I agree that it often won't be the directly involved people who will raise their hands and say, hey, this doesn't feel great. The people around them know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's typically the people around them that kind of raise their hand and say, this between so-and-so and so-and-so, man, it's not great. It's really not working. So it's typically, we hear it from a third party. And there can be pockets where, you have a team that actually has really good culture, but they're sort of distancing themselves from the overall team. And then you'll start to hear murmurings from the overall team about, hey, what's going on over there? We're not hearing what's going on, and they seem a little cloistered. So there are different flavors of it, but we typically hear it. We try to keep our ear to the ground through surveys, through having multiple ways of people giving feedback to leadership. It's not just an open door policy. We don't even have offices, so there's no door to close. But even if people don't feel like going to a VP and grabbing them in the hallway and saying, hey, I want to bring something to your attention. Well, are there other pathways and other ways of making it very easy for us to hear what's going on? Because we want to be close to, all any kind of chatter around anything. And honestly, usually it's less about chemistry and it's more about strategy. People have questions. People really care. And the more that you share the information with them around, hey, this is what we're doing as a company, this is who our customers are, this is what they're trying to accomplish, here's our strategy, and sort of decomposing that down into, the work that someone's going to do on a given day. Thoughtful, creative people will have lots and lots of questions about that. And you got to take the time to get the questions and really work through them.
Why is it, from your perspective, so just kind of being a mentor to any of the higher level leaders that are listening in right now, why is it that A, you think that executives should be mindful of things like team dynamics, and then B, how would you recommend, if they're not getting in touch with them, that they can kind of start? What's the step one? Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show so far. TLCG does more than just podcasts. We work with organizations to help minimize internal conflict, maximize productivity, and help support current and aspiring leaders grow into the most effective stewards possible. Reach out to us to help with individual issues, team issues, or to be speakers at your next event. The best way to get in touch with us is just to visit our website at theleadershipcoachinggroup.com and send us a message through our contact page. All right, let's get back to the interview. What's the step one?
Well, I do think there's a lot of value in having a really good, HR business partnership. I think that that's really huge. And specifically having that not be a confrontational relationship, I think that's really, really important. And, that partnership is it's hard to overstate the importance of that. I think you really have to understand what's going on and be caring and really care about the people that are involved and give them an opportunity to develop options for themselves and improve the dynamic, and I think it really just comes down to a lot of active listening and sort of thoughtful movement forward.
Right. And I know one of the things that's very important to you is developing creative teams. And like you said previously, really, there's kind of an art to forming those teams. What's important for people to think about when they need creativity from their people and they need groups that are coming up with innovative and interesting ideas? What do leaders need to know about those teams?
I think it's nothing terribly new, but they need to feel as though they can fail. You're only going to get as much creativity as you give space for. A plant can only grow its roots as big as the bowl that it's put in. And so, what that means in a leadership level is actually taking the blame for failed projects and not passing it on to your team. It means giving away the credit when things go well, and lifting your team up. And over time, people sort of they read the signals, and they see what leadership is telegraphing, and they realize that they can actually come in and try a variety of different ways of tackling a problem, and that they actually have the space to do that, and that's encouraged. It's an easy thing to say, and it's a somewhat obvious thing to strive for. The part that I would highlight is that in leadership, that means that we have to do some really hard things. It means, like I say, taking full blame when something happens, and really ending the rumor mill and communicating, hey, this is what we learned, this is what we tried, this was my call. Here's our next step when things are not going well. And then when things do go well, don't give the presentation that's the victory lap with the great metrics and the great customer feedback and everything. Let someone else give it. Lift your people up, and your people will see that. And all of this, like, you can never say something bad about somebody on your team in front of somebody else on your team.
Right.
You never can. And you even want to be careful saying something good about somebody on the team, because you really have to telegraph from leadership that you are not there to judge them, and that you're there to really empower them, and that you trust them and will be patient with them. And then, that's the team that goes back to work and will, sit in a conference room and say, all right, I have kind of a crazy idea, or this, we haven't really been thinking about it this way, but, let me throw out, as I say, a crazy idea. You want people to be able to have the crazy ideas, because that's where the really good stuff is.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that we're talking to you about building creative teams, and clearly you have a bit of creativity in your skill set. And I like that you introduce yourself in part as a musician. How does music and technology and leadership kind of all play together in this triad that makes you you?
Yeah, well, I think it's really the same thing. I learned so much from working in the studio. That's really where I do music. I work with a fellow named Brad Helene, who's in this band, The Providers, with me, and then we have an engineer, and we work with session players, and we're really a studio band, and that's a way for me to stay really close to the maker time. And the idea of having a small frontline team that has to be really vulnerable. I mean, talk about having to have psychological safety to throw a crazy idea out. I mean, showing a new song to the band. Oh my God, it's terrifying. It's totally terrifying. And so it's product management and creative management in um, a very similar way. Another huge similarity is we're peers. We're all peers there. If I'm playing guitar and Brad's playing bass, and Mark is playing drums, and you know uh, Anita is singing, and Matt's behind the mixing desk and trying to do engineering work. It's this dynamic where we all need to find common ground to do something amazing. And nobody is walking in knowing what that thing is that at the end of the day we're going to listen back and go, wow, I did not see that coming. It's the same thing that happens at work. It's the same thing that happens at work. I mean, I saw a video the other day of one of our product managers demoing a new feature to a customer, and the customer cried. That's how good it can get. We think about like making software where it's like, no, we're giving people time back in their lives. We're helping them feel a certain way. We're giving them confidence. We're helping them work through imposter syndrome in their roles. Like, we're helping them buy a lake house. We're getting them to their kid's soccer game early. Like, that's what we're building. And to do that, you really need a level of trust and security across the team. And I think that music just pulls that out and makes it really crystal clear.
Definitely. So, something that I think is interesting about HubSpot is that it has this young, fresh feel, and it feels very modern. And how do you help influence a culture from kind of an executive chair to keep that going? Because I think a lot of companies are really worried about that. How do you stay at the cutting edge? How do you stay relevant right now? So, from a culture perspective, how do you influence that goodness?
The biggest thing to remember is that culture is not static. The minute that you write your culture down and celebrate it and never change it again and force everybody back into this way of thinking and working and doing, particularly as you grow, I mean, the moment you do that is the moment your culture begins to die. The product values that we have, one of the top product values we have is to embrace change. And that doesn't mean wildly going around flipping things upside down and, pulling the rug out from under people. But what it does mean is constantly listening to what it's, the experience of working on that team. What's it like to actually be on this team? That's the thing I'm most concerned about at work. I'm number one most concerned about, what is it like to walk through this door? Do you feel safe? Do you feel as though you can do your best work? Do you feel like you can be yourself? And then get that feedback. So we do surveys, we do AMAs. Those are great to do. We do Ask Me Anything sessions with leadership where, we'll pull, 500 people into a room and we'll have 5 leaders in front of the room with microphones and answer questions honestly. And often the answer is, I don't know. People ask really hard questions and we don't know the answer to that, but we are also thinking about it. And it turns out that's actually a pretty good answer. So joining people in their experience and joining people in the conversation and just listening, and then culture is not static, culture evolves. And so taking that feedback and saying, okay, we hear you, and here are the 3 things that we're going to change. Or here's our perspective on this pothole that you see. Whether it's anything from a facilities thing to a strategy, right? Or a customer profile, and just really being transparent and encouraging people's voices to be heard. And then you have to act on that. Because the minute you don't act on the feedback that you get, that's when the feedback starts dying. And that's when your culture starts dying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's one question that I always like to ask all of my guests. If you had just one piece of advice to offer to a brand new leader, what would it be?
It would be to manage all of your people as though you're going to work for them in 5 years. It really changes your perspective. And I think the more you can get on the same side of the table as your people and really start to be, so people think of it as you're moving from being the player to being the coach. And I would take it a step further and say you're really the player's agent. You are there to help them find the right mission to work on, play the right position, be on the right team, get playing time, be compensated fairly. That's your job. It's not just giving them advice. It's not just giving them tradecraft and training them on skills. All of that stuff is important. But if you think of it as, okay, I could be working for this person in 5 years, all of a sudden you think, well, but they don't know how to read a P&L. Oh, but they don't know how to do this. They don't know how to do that. Okay, great. That's all the stuff you need to be teaching.
Right.
So that's my one piece of advice.
Oh, that is so powerful. That's so good. So, Christopher, if people want to learn more about you or your music or HubSpot, where is the best place for them to go?
I would say come check out hubspot.com/jobs. We were recently had the huge honor of being named the #1 best place to work in the US by Glassdoor, which was
Wow.
very, very cool, very humbling. So we have, hundreds of open roles across every department. We're leaning a little bit more into remote work. We have, I think, 10 offices around the world, 9 or 10 offices around the world. So there's a lot there. So check out hubspot.com/jobs. Come get to know us. And on the music side, check out theproviders.com. And then we're on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else. But theproviders.com has all those links.
Awesome. I will put those in the show notes as well so people can just click right over. Christopher, thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your leadership insights. This has been great.
Liz, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that is all that we have for you this week. Until next time, bye-bye. Hey, guys, if you're getting anything out of this show, please head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. I read every single one, and honestly, your feedback is single-handedly what keeps this show going. So go to iTunes and let us know you're listening. Thank you so much for being a part of our community.